Hi everyone. I'm here today with Nicole Walsh, who is a cat enthusiast from the east coast of Australia who loves fern gardens and long dresses. She writes short and novel-length speculative fiction and urban fantasy that span from a little bit dark, a little bit amusing, through to a little bit steamy. Her work is featured in 30 plus magazines and anthology spaces, and her second novel, steamy sci-fi fantasy mashup The God Wife Reborn, released in June 2024. Hi Nicole.
Hello.
Lovely to have you here.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. So I thought that we would start by talking about some of your inspirations. Obviously, you like to combine science fiction and fantasy to an extent. Would you say that you're inspired by some volumes from one more than the other? Are there any particular books which have been really foundational in the work you've done?
I've been reading and consuming sci-fi fantasy since early childhood. I think the books that probably most inspired me as both a writer and most, immersed me as a reader when I was younger was probably Terry Pratchett and Tanith Lee. And I think both elements probably have influenced my writing as well. I especially like with Terry Pratchett the humor and the fact that you're immersed in the character and there's a very human quality to the characters as well as the humor. I think that is the bit that I really like.
Would you say that there things that are there any books that you love now that you maybe wouldn't have at a younger age, or things you loved when you were younger which you don't now?
I think both Terry Pratchett and Tanith Lee I read very heavily. I recall as my teens and 20s buying every single book that I spotted on their shelf in any secondhand shop. Um, Very passionate about them when I was younger. Probably read them less now. Um, but yeah, I tend to get my books secondhand
Mhm.
through bookshops, which I think is a very narrow channel of what books are ending up in secondhand bookshops. And I think they're also the old yellow sort of stained, very pre-loved sort of books. It definitely limits what books are on the shelf for me to be picking up and reading. When it comes to new books, there are financial barriers for me to be buying too many per year.
Yeah.
And I do sit alongside a whole lot of really passionate self-published and independent authors at events, and I do try to pick up some of their books to support the local writing community. And I do, but I think most of the books that I'm engaging with currently is through social media, watching readers' perceptions of them, what they're loving and what they're finding challenging, and what they want to see more of, and what they feel has been done a bit too much. I think an interest in the reading space for what's been coming out lately, but needing to use libraries and secondhand stores for me to be purchasing new books. So I think that really limits what I can discuss or um, be influenced by.
You mentioned that you often work alongside like independent authors, and you try to engage with that. I noticed on your website that you stated that you are pursuing traditional publishing pretty consistently. What
Yes.
um, what do you think what would you say are the pros and cons of each side, and why have you ultimately decided on traditional publishing?
I think there are opportunities in both spaces and there are challenges in both spaces, and those are so significantly different that it is two very different roads to
Mhm.
be on. I don't think there is a road that is stronger than the other. I think both roads come with those challenges and those opportunities, and you understanding the landscape is vitally important, whichever path you choose to be on. And I'm also mindful that there are people who stand on both paths too, and that is also a-okay. For me, as a young child, walking through those libraries, looking at those books on the shelves, the names on those books, I have been writing for as long as I can remember and wanting to be an author, to be somebody there's a book on a shelf somewhere with my name on it, and some person I've never met and never will meet will pick it up and give it a read, maybe, and maybe enjoy it. That has been my dream for as long as I can remember. And reading all the way through my teens and 20s and 30s exclusively in the traditional publishing space, and understanding that road and that journey of what that looks like, of producing something and then approaching a publisher's slush pile in the hope that maybe your piece shines beside the other 6,000 pieces that are lying in that slush pile. That has been my dream from childhood, and I don't want to lose that. So for me, the pathway is traditional publishing. I don't see myself being an indie publisher or a self-published author, because that is the road that from that little child in that book space to now that I've been really focused on. I do, within my writing community, the majority of my friends either are indie published or intending to be indie published. And I'm extremely supportive of any writer on any path that they take that is right for them. I also trust that people, they've done the research, like they've done the research and they figured out what's right for them in this moment. And it's not my place to be telling them what they should or shouldn't be doing. I use the traditional publishing space as a way of calibrating my writing. I might have been writing forever, but I'm very much a learner when it comes to producing something that people want to buy or invest time or money into, or go with. So I think for me, using those slush piles as a way of calibrating my developing voice and my skill in, we can throw words onto a page, but how have we actually arranged that in a way that makes sense from a storytelling angle and a consumer angle? Because what I'm writing and what I'm seeing in my head is potentially different to what the person on the other end reading that for the first time is seeing. So for me, using those slush piles as putting pieces out there, occasionally you'll get feedback or shortlisted, which means maybe you're in the right ballpark. Often you will get to a place where you've tried very hard to advocate for a piece and maybe it's just not going to find a home somewhere and it's time to retire it. So I think that works for me with where I am in my journey as a writer now. Like, I don't just want to write stories. I want to write stories that people are interested in purchasing and buying and investing time and energy into. And whilst I'm aware that self-published and indie authors are doing that a slightly differently with producing something and then seeing what how that's been engaged with from a reading angle, I think I'm using those slush pile gates, those very narrow slush pile gates, as a way to kind of figure out, have I produced something that somebody else can read and go, I'm actually behind this project. I think this project has got something here that's different from all the others that are sitting beside it. So that's why traditional publishing is right for me at this point in my life.
As the other side to that, would you say that there are any challenges that you think have come because you have pursued traditional publishing?
Oh, I feel like most of the people who will be watching this interview are probably aware of the historical challenges in the traditional publishing space, where we have some voices that are being heard in that space, and we have a lot of voices who are not being heard in that space. So I think there is, within the traditional publishing model, there are a whole range of challenges that I suspect most people who are in the reading or writing community will be aware of, with the narrowness of what is being picked up versus what is out there, and voices from more marginalized communities that may not have been published or have definitely not been published over the past decades or centuries. So I think that probably is the most obvious one. And I think the willingness to be a strong advocate for your piece, but then at some point recognize that maybe this is not the piece that is going to be published. I think the willingness to do that, in my early years, through my 20s, I would produce one piece. It would take me many, many years to write the piece. I'd send it to one or two places, get one or two rejections, and just be absolutely devastated. There are whole manuscripts that I never opened again after a rejection. There's been a lot of sookiness and a lot of sadness in this journey as well. But I think now, where I'm at in my writing journey, you've got to be prepared that some pieces you might think is absolutely fabulous, but if other people are not feeling that it's absolutely fabulous, maybe we do need to shelve that, to put that aside for now, and to be open to working on other projects as well.
Are you working on, and I know you are publishing tons of short stories all the time, but are you working on another novel at this moment?
I'm lucky enough at the moment to be able to invest quite a bit of time each week into my writing. This is the most in my whole life that I've been able to invest in my week to be able to write. I think
Mhm.
my goal for the next couple of years will be producing at least two new novel length manuscripts each year, with the
Oh, wow.
intention to then ensure that by next year that I have got them edited, beta read a few times, edited again, and then out chasing slush piles. I think that is probably necessary for me to be able to improve my voice and to be diversify the products that I am putting out there. Also to retire those pieces that I have advocated very strongly for, but possibly are not going to find a home at this point. So that's my plan. So I have actually written two manuscripts this year already.
Oh my
Both of them are
word.
very raw and raggedy. So I'll be spending the second half of the year cleaning those up with the hope that by the end of the year I'll be able to get some beta readers to have a look at them and to give me some feedback on some edits for early next year.
Well, that sounds wonderful. Two manuscripts already. The first half of the year is incredible. Um, I'm sure we'll all look out very excitedly for those.
Yeah,
Um,
well, whether they get picked up or not is another is another question. And I also recognize my privilege on that. My privilege on that being able to, I do get up super early. It is very early here at the moment. I get up at 3 o'clock, between 3 and 4 each day, whether it's a work day or a non-work day. And I do spend a lot of time writing, but I recognize the privilege of that, the privilege I have at the moment in being able to work 3 or 4 days a week on my day job and be able to write around that. A lot of folk don't have that capacity to be pulling that many hours out of a week for a hobby or a part-time semi-professional writing sort of space. And also recognize my privilege in all the decades previously that I have computers over the last decade or so to be able to write on, electricity, a roof over my head, stable housing where I've been able to move from place to place and still be able to pull out all my things from my 20s or my teens, like recognizing my privilege in being able to write as much as I write and being able to produce two novels. It obviously does come with a significant investment of time, but also not everybody that I know and not everybody that I walk alongside every day have the privilege that I have to be able to sit myself down on a chair, put my fingers on a keyboard and write to that extent.
well, I mean, there's so much discussion, isn't there, about how for so many people, um, it's so difficult to find that time, to find that space, just because of the circumstances of their life.
There's definitely, by walking beside people in challenging times of their life, hearing their perceptions and their stories and their voices, and acknowledging that so many people that I work with every day have such a stronger story than what I will ever have and such a strong voice. But because of their life situation, they are not going to be able to go home to a house tonight. They are not going to be able to have a computer and electricity to write, put their fingers on a keyboard. They will not have the same email address in a year's time when that publisher is rejecting their piece out of a slush pile. There is I think, an importance in immersing ourselves in the wider world and the wider community and other people's obviously that they have their own lived experience, but by us perceiving that there is a world bigger than ourselves is super important. So
You've been very public on your website about your anti-generative AI stance.
yes.
Would you care to elaborate going into that on here, just maybe for people who are less aware of it? I feel like it's very much a conversation within the writing community, but many people are just less, many of the people I speak to just are less aware of the issues that it can cause for authors. And so I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
Sure, sure. So again, I guess setting that it's each person has to decide what's right for them. And this is me just being really transparent and clear on where I stand on it.
Mhm.
I am pursuing traditional publishing, which means I'm working with small presses around the short stories that I'm submitting, go across to a small press who's creating a book, including a cover. They're also putting it on their website next to images. And if I'm working with a traditional publisher, they have final say over that cover and what that cover looks like and where the resources drawn to create that cover are coming from.
Mhm.
Um, my personal stance is I don't use generative AI in any of my writing processes, from creating ideas to creating character art and images to writing the story itself or editing beyond, what, Microsoft Word gives you with a spell check and so forth, that I'm not using anything around the editing. But once it does go to the hands of the publisher, you don't have as much control as an author. I will in the future hope that if I ever am lucky enough to work with another publisher around a novel length piece, that maybe we can negotiate human only art on the cover, or in the very least, if they are not open to that being in the contract, putting in the contract for a robust conversation around the opportunities and challenges presented by AI art on the cover, hoping that maybe they'll be open to that. Because I feel as an author, it's often me that is engaging with the community around conversations about the cover. My latest piece does have AI art on the cover, and I do within the social media space get pushback. Luckily, I have a very small number of followers and very few views on my material, but there still is folk commenting on the AI art on the cover and making assumptions then that the contents are also AI produced. I'm at events selling my books, and there are folk who are coming up quite passionate and emotional to try to educate me around not using AI on the covers of my books. I don't know if the publishers have the same experiences, if they're getting a whole pile of pushback as well, or whether it is more aimed at the author because it's my name on the cover, not the publisher's name. So that's why it was important for me to be clear on those websites that there are things that are outside my control, such as what publishers are doing with covers. I do feel the last publisher listened, I felt very respected and heard and listened to, and we had very lovely, robust conversations. But that's the direction that the art took, and also I was able to
Yeah.
contribute to the vibe and the feel and everything. Where the materials were sourced was it's the publisher putting those resources into that space. So I think most people have some understanding of the environmental consequences of using AI. And I think most people have an understanding that when you're creating something with a generative AI, that we're molding together materials that have been harvested from a whole pile of different places without those people's consent, pulled together to create the product that you are molding in that. So for me, the other element there is I don't believe that creative pieces drop out of the sky in a stroke of lightning, unless you are using generative AI, where maybe it does. But for us to produce a novel, we are talking 3 a.m. starts. We are talking choices about career. We are talking choices about income and financial stability. And there is a lot of things that happen leading up to that piece of creativity, whether it's art or it's writing, that hours of time have gone into creating that piece, that have been choices and investments that that artist or that creator has made to get to that point. There's also life experience, skill development. Like, I could not write the pieces that I'm writing now in my 20s or my 30s. It is the decades, the paths that I've walked, the things that I've experienced that have led up to me being able to produce the novels that I produce now. There is a history, and there is a weight, and there is a whole pile of things that are sitting behind every piece of art, every novel, every written piece that is so much bigger than just what the words are on that particular page that's being harvested to mold something else. And I think that using that AI, generative AI, is stripping away all the choices and the life experiences and the weight of all that stuff that those artists and creators have produced, to create something that is quite, in my understanding, I don't know, but I feel like it's quite quick. It's now appearing on the page, but it's taken away all of that came with the human creators who created the things that is molding that. So I think that's it for me. I think that's the reason why, as well as the environmental impact and the fact that you're using stolen products that have not been acknowledged. It's the fact that we're stripping away everything that sits with that, all the weight that came behind that, all the life experiences and the choices and the voices that our voice and the voices of the people around us that went to create that piece of art or that novel.
That was really powerful.
Oh gosh,
That
thank you.
no, that was. I was like, wow, I'm very moved by that. I think that's a wonderful way of looking at it, and I really agree. And I think that so often writers have that sort of pushback, even beyond just the issues of stolen work, that there's something about generative AI which just isn't what fiction should be almost, but I've never really heard it as well as articulated as you just did. So I really appreciate hearing that. I really appreciate that you would take the time to say that. All right, well, our time is up, but thank you so much. This has been absolutely lovely, and it was lovely to meet you.
Oh, thank you, Grace. Thank you so much for taking the time to have a chit chat. This is my first ever interview, so I was very nervous. Thank you for your
You've
for your
done
kindness
very
in
well.
doing this, and thank you for your time.